She refused to go home. What her daycare teacher discovered changed everything. You can usually tell when something's off, when the air feels heavier than it should, when a child flinches in a moment that should be full of joy. You don't need science for it, just time and instinct, and the kind of heart that breaks a little every day in a place like Sprout Daycare. That evening, Claire Manning didn't expect to notice anything strange, but she did. And that one decision, to follow a gut feeling she couldn't explain, would change everything. At exactly 5:45 p.m., golden light spilled through the playroom windows, stretching across scattered crayons, nap mats folded neatly by the wall, and rows of tiny shoes lined up like quiet soldiers. The end of day always had a rhythm, laughs echoing in the hallway, parents checking in, and little arms flying into grown-up hugs. Claire sat behind the front desk, tapping gently on the daycare's new pickup system, a barcode app that had become second nature now. Children's names blinked in green as they were signed out one by one. And then came the name that stopped her thumb, Lily Brower. Her mother, Natalie, was listed as en route. No red flags, no delay. Claire smiled to herself. Lily was always among the last few to leave, and she never seemed to mind. A quiet girl, thoughtful, the kind of child who lined up her markers by color and folded her nap blanket without being asked. Claire locked her phone screen and headed toward the playground. The afternoon air was soft, the kind that lingers a little longer in early autumn, when the days try to convince you summer hasn't truly left. Laughter bubbled from the sandbox, where two boys were burying toy trucks, and in the distance, the high-pitched squeal of the swings creaked like a song stuck on repeat. Claire scanned the area, and there she was, Lily, sitting atop the plastic slide with two friends, knees tucked to her chest, dark hair curled slightly from sweat and play. Her face, for a moment, was pure light. "Lily," Claire called gently, careful not to startle. "Sweetheart, it's time to get ready. Your mom will be here any minute." The effect was instant. The laughter stopped. Lily's body stiffened like someone had flipped a switch inside her. Her gaze dropped, her mouth pinched shut, and she slid slowly down the plastic chute without a word. As her feet hit the ground, she didn't run toward Claire like usual. Instead, she turned away, one arm clutching the wooden post of the slide, the other curled against her ribs. "I don't want to go," she whispered. Claire crouched beside her, heart skipping. "It's okay. You'll be back tomorrow, remember? What's wrong, Lily?" The girl didn't answer immediately. She stared at the mulch-covered ground, blinking faster now. "Can I stay here?" she mumbled, voice quivering. "Just don't make me go home yet." Claire tilted her head, softening her voice. "Why, honey? Is something wrong at home?" Lily's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. "It's just different there. People yell. No one smiles. It's not like here." That was the moment Claire felt the shift, not just emotionally, but physically, like her body had absorbed the tremor of a truth too heavy for a 7-year-old to carry. She didn't ask more, not yet. She reached out, brushed a strand of hair behind Lily's ear, and said, "How about 5 more minutes? Then we'll go see Mom. Deal?" The girl hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. But when Claire held out her pinky, Lily looked at it and didn't move. Claire's chest tightened. "That's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to." As Claire stood and walked back toward the door, she turned to glance one more time. Lily had taken a seat on the wood chips beneath the slide, her back turned, arms wrapped tightly around her legs. Something about the way she curled into herself made Claire's heart ache. It wasn't defiance. It was fear in disguise. Back at the desk, Claire pulled up the parent check-in screen again. Still Natalie, still listed as arriving. The doorbell chimed. She looked up. The man who stepped into the lobby wasn't Natalie. He was tall, mid-30s, lean build, short cropped hair, wearing a navy windbreaker and a polite, practiced smile. "Hi there," he said. "I'm here for Lily Brower." Claire blinked, her professional instincts kicking in. "I'm sorry, Lily's mother is registered for pickup today." He nodded and casually reached into his pocket, pulling out a phone. "Yeah. She had something come up last minute. I brought her phone. I'm logged in." Claire took the phone and scanned the barcode. It matched. The app confirmed identity. Everything was in order. Still, her stomach turned. "Lucas, right?" she asked cautiously. He smiled wider. "You remember me." Claire nodded slowly. "From the parent night last spring." "She'll be seeing a lot more of me now. Natalie got a new job with longer hours. Just wanted to let you know." He spoke calmly, with the charm of someone who knew how to say all the right things. But Claire couldn't shake the way his tone lingered just a moment too long on the word now. Like a claim. She hesitated before responding. "Would you like me to add you as a guardian in the system? So, next time you don't have to use Natalie's credentials?" "That'd be great." She helped him register a new profile. All the while, her hands moved steadily, but her mind kept returning to Lily, curled beneath the slide, whispering about yelling and silence. Once the system updated, Claire buzzed him through the child gate. He slipped off his shoes and followed her down the hall. As they approached the playground door, Claire caught sight of Lily. She was still under the slide, her face peeking through the beams. When Lucas called her name, Claire watched her body recoil. Lily didn't answer. She didn't move. "Come on, kiddo," Lucas said lightly, stepping forward. Claire held her breath. Lily rose slowly. Her feet dragged. She descended the slide like someone approaching a ledge. When Lucas reached for her hand, Claire saw it. That fleeting second of hesitation, the shiver in the girl's fingers. But she took it, and they walked, hand in hand, past the lockers. Claire knelt to help Lily with her backpack and water bottle. The girl reached for her shoes, but when Lucas crouched to help, Lily jerked upright and bolted. She didn't scream, just ran. Claire and Lucas locked eyes. He forced a laugh. "She really does love it here." But Claire didn't laugh back. Lily reached the door, stretched for the handle just out of reach. Her small hand grasped at air. Lucas caught her, scooped her into his arms. "You're tired, that's all," he said. "We'll be home soon." She stopped struggling, but didn't lean in. Claire noticed it. The absence of touch, the stillness of compliance. As they left, Claire stood by the entrance, watching them disappear down the hallway. The image of Lily's face lingered behind her eyes. And though she had no proof, no policy to lean on, and no words to file a report with, Claire felt something she couldn't shake. Something was deeply, terribly wrong. And then the front desk phone buzzed. Claire turned back to find a coworker holding something out toward her. A small, fox-shaped stuffed animal. Her breath caught. Lily's. She'd left it behind. The only thing she never left behind. Claire took it, her hand closing around its worn, soft fur. Outside, the last of the sunlight was slipping past the trees. She glanced at the door. She still had time, and though she hadn't planned on it, though her shift was technically over and she owed no one any explanation, she stepped out into the evening air, stuffed animal in hand, and followed her gut straight into the darkening night. The sidewalk felt colder than it should have for an autumn evening in Tacoma. Claire Manning stepped outside the daycare building with Lily's stuffed fox clutched tightly in one hand and a swirl of hesitation chasing her every breath. The evening was still, eerily so. The kind of stillness that lingers before a storm. The kind that makes your skin tighten without knowing why. The parking lot was half empty now, with most parents already gone. But at the far end, just beside the last painted line, a red SUV still idled quietly. She spotted him. Lucas stood with the rear door open, one arm resting on the frame, the other guiding Lily into her booster seat. Claire didn't call out. She slowed her pace, watching from a distance as he clipped the belt across Lily's chest and handed her a water bottle without making eye contact. Lily didn't speak. She didn't even turn her head. Her gaze was locked on the dashboard, blank, unfocused, far away. Claire took another step forward, ready to lift the toy and wave. And then she heard it. "You embarrassed me back there," Lucas muttered. Not shouting, but his voice thick with something darker. "You're just like your mother, always needing attention." Claire froze. She wasn't close enough to hear everything clearly, but the tone, flat, restrained, and coiled like a spring, hit her like a slap. Lucas's words weren't cruel in what they said, but they were cruel in how he said them. Not a father's disappointment, a man's warning. She could see Lily's shoulders drop just slightly, her body folding into the seat. The stuffed fox, still in Claire's hand, suddenly felt heavier. He shut the door. Claire stepped back behind a tree, breath catching in her throat. It would have been so easy to walk away, to tell herself she was overreacting, that children cry, that parents get frustrated, that her shift was over and this wasn't her place. But her hands trembled, and her heart raced in a way that didn't feel like routine concern. Lily hadn't just been hesitant today. She had been afraid. Claire made a choice then. One that didn't come from her job title or a training manual. It came from the part of her that knew what it meant when a child no longer reached for comfort, but froze instead. When they stopped crying. When silence became their shield. She sprinted back to her own car, slid behind the wheel, and started the engine. The stuffed fox sat on the passenger seat like a quiet witness. The SUV pulled out. She followed, keeping 2 cars' distance. Her breath was shallow, and her fingers trembled slightly on the steering wheel. She told herself it was just about the toy, just about returning something important. But she knew it wasn't. The route started out normal. Lucas merged onto the main road, passed 2 intersections, and turned right, away from the neighborhoods, away from the grocery stores and gas stations. Claire's brow furrowed. She tapped her dashboard to light up the map. According to Lily's file, their listed home address was less than 10 minutes in the other direction. So where was he going? Streetlights became fewer and farther between. Trees thickened on either side of the road. What had been a familiar part of town slowly began to dissolve into the edges of Tacoma's forested outskirts. Winding streets where pine needles carpeted driveways, and the shadows seemed to stretch a little longer. Claire kept her headlights on low, heart pounding louder than her tires. She checked the time. They had been driving for just under 20 minutes. Still no sign of a turn toward home. Up ahead, Lucas's SUV slowed. Then, without signaling, it veered onto a narrow gravel path, partially hidden between two trees. Claire's foot eased off the gas. She watched as his brake lights glowed red in the gloom, then disappeared entirely. He'd turned off the road. Claire pulled over to the shoulder, switched off her own engine, and sat in silence. The path he had taken didn't lead to any driveway. No mailbox. No porch light. Just trees. She rolled her window down and listened. Nothing. No wind. No crickets. No sounds of a child laughing or calling for a parent. Just the creak of her own breath, and the faint crackling of leaves under tires that had already passed. She couldn't see the SUV anymore. Her pulse pounded so loud she felt it behind her eyes. Her mind raced with reasons. Maybe Lily needed to use the bathroom. Maybe they were exploring. Maybe this was just nothing. But the look on Lily's face beneath the slide, the way she shrank from her father's touch, the way she ran. Claire didn't even realize her hand was already reaching for the stuffed fox. Its tiny, fraying ears brushed her fingers. She took a breath, stepped out of her car, and felt the gravel shift beneath her shoes. She walked a few feet forward, close enough to glimpse red through the trees. There it was, Lucas's SUV, parked in a shadowed clearing. Its headlights off, the doors shut. She could barely make out their silhouettes. Lucas's tall frame standing beside the passenger door. Lily's small figure near him. He reached for her hand. She didn't resist, but she didn't move forward either. It looked like she was rooted in place, like a sapling refusing to bend toward a storm. Claire called out, louder than she meant to, "Lucas?" He jerked his head around, his shoulders tensed. Claire stepped closer, holding up the toy. Lily left her fox. There was a pause, one beat too long. Then Lucas smiled, the same smile from earlier. Only now it looked stretched, tight, and unnatural under the dimming light. "Oh," he said, voice flat. "That's thoughtful." Claire glanced at Lily, whose eyes widened slightly at the sight of the toy. But she didn't reach for it. Instead, she stepped behind her father. "We were just—" "She had to go to the bathroom," Lucas added. "Too much juice today." Claire nodded slowly, saying nothing. Lucas took a step toward her, hand out for the toy. Claire didn't move. "May I ask," she said carefully, "why here? I thought your house was just a few blocks from the daycare." Lucas blinked. "It is, but she said she couldn't wait." Another pause. The trees rustled faintly. "Well," he added, "I think it's time you got back. We're fine." He turned to Lily. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's take care of things before the sun sets." Claire didn't respond. She handed the toy forward. Lily took it, hugging it tightly. Claire lingered as they turned deeper into the woods, and as their shapes began to disappear into the shadows, something inside her screamed, "Don't let them go." But her feet wouldn't move, her voice caught in her throat. She stood there in the fading light, unable to name the dread blooming in her chest, until the forest swallowed them whole, and she realized she hadn't just followed them out of concern. She had walked straight into a moment she couldn't turn back from. The forest swallowed more than just light. It swallowed time. Claire stood at the edge of the gravel pull-off, her fingers numb from holding the stuffed fox only moments before. The faint outline of the SUV now reduced to a dim, lifeless silhouette under the cloak of trees. There was no sound of birdsong, no wind brushing through pine needles, just the stillness, heavy and unrelenting. She could no longer see them. Lily, Lucas. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She tried to replay the last few seconds, tried to justify the exchange, the tone, the casual lie about needing to use the bathroom so close to home. But every version she reran in her mind led to the same conclusion. Something wasn't right. She turned back toward her car, walking slower than necessary, as if expecting the woods to reach out and grab her by the back of the neck. The moment she slid into the driver's seat, the cabin light snapped on, briefly illuminating the empty passenger seat. The fox wasn't there anymore. That simple absence felt louder than a scream. Claire sat still, hands on the wheel, breath shallow. She should have gone home. She should have let it go. But instead, she pulled out her phone and opened the Sprout Daycare system. Again, thumb hovering over the Browers family file. She scrolled down to the contact info. There it was, the address. Their listed residence was only 8 minutes from the daycare in the opposite direction. She checked the map again. The forest? Nowhere near it. Her throat tightened. She didn't want to make a false assumption. She didn't want to believe she was chasing shadows. But children don't ask to stay at school because everyone is kind here unless they know what cruelty feels like. Children don't run to locked doors unless they're trying to escape something they can't name. She tapped the call icon on the screen and held the phone to her ear. Sprout Daycare, how can I help you? Hi, it's Claire. I just wanted to let you know I had to step out for a bit. One of the kids left something important behind, and I'm trying to get it to them before they get too far. A beat of silence. Then the voice replied, Oh, okay, sure. You're good. Everything's under control here. Thanks, Pose, Claire said softly, then ended the call. The moment she hung up, a sense of unease wrapped around her chest like a too-tight belt. She was technically off the clock. She had no protocol, no backup, no plan. Just a phone, a half-tank of gas, and a growing certainty that this wasn't just about a stuffed animal anymore. She restarted the engine. The SUV was gone. She cursed softly under her breath, pulling out onto the main road, trying not to let her panic take the wheel. There was only one exit from that forest path. They had to have passed her without headlights, maybe while she was still on the phone. She checked the road in both directions. Nothing. Then, in the distance, tail lights. A red glint between trees. Claire pressed the gas pedal gently and eased onto the road. It wasn't stalking, she told herself. It was concern. She stayed back, far enough not to raise suspicion, close enough to track the turns. The SUV was moving faster now, weaving through neighborhoods, taking side streets. Claire struggled to keep pace without losing them. She gritted her teeth, wondering if Lucas had seen her car behind him, if he was testing her, if this entire detour had been a decoy. When they finally slowed, Claire recognized the street. Oak Hollow Lane, a suburban stretch with wide sidewalks, trimmed hedges, and two-story homes with porch swings and welcome mats that promised comfort. The SUV turned into the driveway, of a white colonial with black shutters. The listed address matched, so why had they been in the forest? Claire parked 2 houses down, close enough to see but far enough not to stand out. She slumped slightly in her seat, heart hammering in her chest. There was a light in the foyer. A porch lamp flickered above the door. For a moment, everything looked normal. And then she heard it. A sudden crack, sharp and brittle, like a plate breaking against tile. Then a voice, faint but clear through the evening air. "Stop! Please! Not in front of our daughter!" Claire's hands flew to her phone. She unlocked it, hit record, and raised it toward the house. Through the living room window, she caught a glimpse of movement. A blurred figure, fast and frantic. Then curtains were yanked closed from inside. Her throat tightened as she continued filming. She could hear the muffled sob of a woman, followed by a low rumble of a man's voice. There was no yelling, no rage-filled screams, just the steady thud of something dark uncoiling behind walls. Then a silhouette, tall and angular, lifted something overhead. A bat? A stick? The shape was unmistakable. Claire ended the recording, her fingers trembling, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Her voice cracked on the first syllable, then steadied. I'm parked outside a house on Oak Hollow Lane. I think there's domestic violence happening inside. I heard a woman scream. I saw a man holding something. He looked like he was about to hit someone. There's a child inside too. Please hurry. Can you give us the exact address? Claire read it from the file on her screen. We have officers on the way. Are you safe where you are? I'm in my car. They don't know I'm here. Stay put. Don't approach. We'll handle it. Claire clutched the phone in her lap. She stared at the front window, breath shallow, every second stretching longer than the last. Then the door opened. Lucas stepped out, alone. His expression wasn't angry, it was blank. But his eyes, they didn't scan the street like a man going for a breath of fresh air. They searched. They hunted. Claire ducked slightly behind the steering wheel. He was looking for someone. He walked to the SUV, opened the door, paused. That's when she saw it. His sleeve had slipped up slightly, revealing a fresh scratch running along his forearm. Red, thin, like someone had fought back. He yanked his sleeve down quickly, scanned the street again, and reached toward the passenger seat. Then, sirens. Blue and red light flooded the street as 2 police cruisers rounded the corner, tires screeching. Lucas jumped, his hand still inside the car. An officer's voice boomed over the speaker. "Hands where we can see them!" Lucas froze. Claire didn't move. She kept recording. And as the officers poured out, weapons drawn, surrounding Lucas and forcing him to the ground, she allowed herself the first full breath she'd taken in 20 minutes. In the upstairs window, a small face appeared, wide-eyed and pale, pressed against the glass. Lily, still clutching the stuffed fox, still waiting for someone to notice. The lights painted the neighborhood in harsh blues and reds. They bounced off the polished shutters and manicured hedges, casting wild shadows across the quiet homes lining Oak Hollow Lane. What had once looked like a page from a real estate brochure now looked like a stage set for something far more brutal, something that had been happening long before the sirens arrived. Claire Manning sat frozen behind the wheel, her phone still clutched tightly in her hand. The recording paused, but her own breathing still erratic. From her window, she could see Lucas being pulled to his feet. His face was twisted, Not with confusion, not even with anger. It was something colder, more calculating, the face of a man trying to maintain control as it unraveled. One of the officers was patting him down, another opening the door to the SUV, flashlight cutting across the interior like a scalpel. Claire watched the beam pause, then dip down. The officer reached in and emerged holding a large hammer. Its steel head caught the flashing lights like a mirror. Claire felt her throat tighten. That had been what he was reaching for. Her fingers, still trembling, pressed record again. Lucas didn't struggle. He didn't speak. But when he turned his head slightly, he spotted Claire's car. And for the briefest second, their eyes locked. She didn't blink. Inside the house, more officers had already entered through the front door, guns drawn, voices calm but firm. Claire could hear them even from outside. Tacoma PD, is anyone inside? Make yourself known. Then the front door opened again. A woman emerged between two officers, her face a patchwork of bruises and split skin. Her arm was wrapped protectively around a trembling girl, clutching a fox-shaped stuffed animal. Claire's breath caught. Lily. The moment Lily saw her, she broke free from her mother's grip and ran, straight toward Claire's car. Claire was already out and moving. The child's small arms wrapped around her middle like she was anchoring herself to something that couldn't be pulled away. Claire dropped to her knees, embracing her without hesitation. Lily didn't cry. She just buried her face into Claire's sweater and held on like the wind might carry her off otherwise. "It's okay," Claire whispered, brushing Lily's hair away from her face. "You're safe now, I promise." Behind her, one of the officers approached. His voice was low but direct. "Ma'am, we'll need a statement. Are you the one who made the call?" Claire nodded, her hand still gently resting on Lily's back. "Please stay close. We'll talk to you shortly." The officer turned toward the house again, but Claire barely heard him. Her attention was on the woman now being led toward the paramedic van. Megan, Natalie Brower, Lily's mother. Her expression was a mask of pain, emotional more than physical, but her eyes found Claire's with startling clarity, and in them a single word lived: "Thank you." Claire stood, still holding Lily's hand. As they approached the paramedics, Lily's grip tightened. "Miss Claire," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible over the chatter and static of police radios. "Daddy said if I told, he'd lock me to the tree." Claire stopped walking. Lily's eyes were glassy. Her lips trembled, but she didn't look away. "He said the one with the hole in the middle, in the forest. He showed me today. He said if I didn't stop making noise, he'd leave me there." Claire knelt slowly again, this time not just to comfort, but to stay steady. She looked into the child's eyes and didn't try to correct her, didn't try to explain it away. Instead, she said, "You don't have to go back there, ever." Lily nodded once, pressing her face into Claire's shoulder. A moment later, a paramedic gently reached out. "Sweetheart, I just need to check you real quick, just to make sure everything's okay." Lily clung tighter. Claire smiled softly, trying to stay calm, though her heart felt like it was being wrung out like a soaked towel. "It's all right, I'll be right here." Lily released her grip slowly, reluctantly, and allowed herself to be led by the medic. Claire stood nearby, watching her, ready to step in at the slightest sign of distress. But Lily was calm now, still shaking, but no longer shrinking. From behind, Megan approached, her steps slow, uneven. Her face bore a fresh bandage across her temple, and her hand was cradled protectively by a sling. Yet she didn't hesitate when she reached Claire. Her voice was hoarse. "I didn't know if anyone saw. If anyone ever would." Claire met her gaze, quietly. "I did." Megan's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not in that moment. Instead, she placed her uninjured hand gently on Claire's arm. "You followed them, didn't you?" "I did," Claire replied. "I had to." There was silence between them then. Not uncomfortable, just full. Then, across the street, a sudden yell broke the calm. Lucas, now restrained and inside the back of a patrol car, slammed his cuffed fists against the barrier and shouted through the small rear window. "You think you're a hero? You think you're saving her? You have no idea what you've done." Officers turned and immediately moved to block him from view, closing the door and muffling his voice. But Claire heard it, and so did Megan. She didn't react, didn't flinch. Instead, she turned back to her daughter, who now held out her hand again. This time, not out of fear, but to reach for her mother. They touched, and something in the air shifted. For the first time that night, Claire allowed herself to exhale fully. An officer approached once more. "Miss Manning, we'll need that footage. And your statement." Claire nodded. She handed over the phone. "Everything you need is in there. From the forest, from the house." "Thank you," the officer said. "You may have saved more than just one life tonight." Claire watched as the squad cars began to reverse from the driveway. The crowd was dispersing. Neighbors stood on porches, murmuring, wondering, too late to have mattered, too far to have heard. She looked down the street, past the glowing taillights of the departing cruiser, and then back at Lily, who still held the fox, who still looked afraid, but also, somehow, a little braver now. The night pressed in heavier now, the sirens fading into the distance, replaced by the soft hum of the ambulance's interior. Inside, Claire sat just outside the open doors, her knees aching from crouching too long, her thoughts louder than the machines beeping around her. Lily was wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, her fox tucked against her chest like a life raft. Across from her, Megan sat upright, bandaged but still alert, her gaze locked on her daughter with the kind of unblinking presence that only a mother in survival mode can maintain. The paramedics worked gently, examining bruises, checking vitals, making notes. But it was the silence between Lily and Megan that filled the space more than any conversation. A silence built not of awkwardness, but of fragile stitching, an invisible thread weaving them back together, one breath at a time. Claire remained close. She didn't speak. She just stayed. It was Megan who finally broke the quiet. "She used to laugh in her sleep," she said softly, her voice hoarse. "Every night. When she was 3, I'd hear it through the baby monitor. That little giggle, like her dreams were made of sunshine." Her eyes remained fixed on her daughter. She stopped after he moved back in. Claire said nothing. The truth didn't need commentary. It only needed space to live. Megan looked down at her lap. "I thought if I kept the peace long enough, if I walked on eggshells quietly enough, I could protect her. But you can't protect a child from silence. They hear everything we think we've hidden." Lily stirred slightly at the sound of her mother's voice and opened her eyes. Mommy? Megan leaned forward, every movement slow with pain. Yes, sweetheart. Are we going back home? Claire held her breath. Megan paused, then shook her head gently. No, baby. Not tonight. Lily didn't cry. She didn't even frown. She simply leaned back into the wall of the ambulance and pulled the fox closer. I don't want to ever go back there. Claire swallowed hard, her throat dry. Megan looked at her again. You don't know what you did tonight. I mean, maybe you do. But if you hadn't followed them, if you hadn't noticed, Claire met her gaze. I just couldn't ignore it. I used to be like that, Megan said, a faint, broken smile appearing on her lips. Before him. They sat in quiet again as the officers returned, clipboard in hand. Miss Manning, the officer began, we've reviewed your footage. We've also spoken to Ms. Brower and her daughter. Your instincts were dead on. Lucas had been manipulating the pickup system, logged into his wife's phone, bypassed our guardian tracking protocols. He'd never filed for legal custody. Claire nodded slowly. He said she couldn't come, that she was working late. That's what predators do, the officer said bluntly. They find cracks and pour themselves into them. Claire turned to Megan. I don't want Lily to have to come back to daycare tomorrow if she's not ready. But when she is, we'll be ready for her. I promise. Megan blinked rapidly. I think she'll want to come back more than anywhere else. You were the only place she ever felt safe. The officer interrupted gently. We'll be transporting Mr. Brower to the station shortly. Charges are being processed. Domestic battery, child endangerment, attempted assault. There may be more once we search the vehicle. Claire's jaw clenched. He had a hammer in the car. The officer nodded grimly. We believe he intended to use it. Silence spread like frost. A few minutes later, as Lily was being helped down from the ambulance and into a warm blanket, Claire reached for her hand. Lily grabbed it without hesitation. I forgot my fox today, she whispered. Claire smiled gently. But you got it back. That's the part that matters. Lily looked up at her, eyes wide, searching. Will you still be at daycare? Every day, Claire said softly. Right where you left me. Lily nodded, and for the first time all evening, her lips curled, just slightly, into something that resembled peace. As Megan walked toward the second ambulance for transport, one of the female officers beside her gently offered her arm for support. Megan accepted it, but turned one last time. Claire, she turned. Don't ever doubt what you are, Megan said. You didn't just notice. You didn't just act. You believed her, and that saved her. Claire didn't speak. She just nodded and watched the mother and daughter disappear into the back of the ambulance together. Injured, yes, but intact, alive, together. The last police cruiser pulled away, Lucas inside it, eyes hidden behind a blacked-out window. He didn't scream again, didn't shout, just faded down the road like a ghost that no longer had a home to haunt. Claire stood in the center of the street, the autumn wind picking up around her. Her hands were empty now. The fox was with Lily, where it belonged, but her heart was still full of noise and questions and one certainty. She had done the right thing, and yet something still didn't sit right, because she remembered Lily's words in the forest, the tree, the threat, and the way she said, "He showed me today." By the time Claire arrived at the police station, the sky had folded into midnight. The clouds hung low and heavy, as if the night itself were exhausted by what had unfolded. She parked in a visitor space marked with faded white paint, the engine still humming in the quiet lot before she turned the key and let the silence rush in. For a moment, she didn't move. Her fingers remained wrapped around the steering wheel, the pressure in her knuckles, the only thing tethering her to the moment. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed with the kind of coldness only found in late-night municipal buildings. The front desk officer took her name and nodded silently, as if they'd been expecting her all along. A few moments later, the same officer from the scene, Detective Vasquez, emerged from a hallway holding a clipboard. "Miss Manning," he said, his voice softer now, no longer speaking like someone delivering instructions, but like someone delivering thanks. "We've completed initial interviews with Megan and Lily. We'll need your full statement to complete the file." Claire followed him down a corridor where the walls were lined with old photographs of fallen officers and dusty display cases. The room they entered was small, windowless, just a table, two chairs, a recording device, and a pitcher of water that no one ever drank from. As she sat, Claire released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Whenever you're ready," Vasquez said gently, pressing the red light on the recorder. Claire started from the beginning. She recounted the check-in system, Lily's behavior on the playground, the unusual appearance of Lucas with Natalie's phone, the girl's refusal to leave, the fox left behind, the voice she overheard in the car, and the moment she followed them into the forest. She described the detour, the darkness, the lie about the bathroom, the address that didn't add up, the window, the silhouette with the hammer, the sound of glass breaking, Lily's voice, Megan's bruises, all of it. By the end, her voice was low and steady, not because she wasn't shaken, but because there was nothing left to hide. Vasquez nodded through every word, no interruptions, no disbelief. When she finished, he leaned forward. "There's something else," he said. "After you left, we asked Lily one more time if she remembered anything about the forest. She hesitated at first, but then she said he made her look at something." Claire's breath caught. "A tree," Vasquez continued, "one with a hollow in the center. She said he told her, 'If you ever tell, this is where you'll sleep.'" He paused, then added, "We sent officers to that spot this morning, just after sunrise." Claire's fingers tensed. "There's a clearing near the end of that path. It's not visible from the road. You'd have to know exactly where to turn, and the tree—" He shook his head. "It's real. Big cedar. Hollow trunk. Inside, they found what looked like an old chain, looped through a ground bolt. Rusted, but intact." Claire's stomach twisted. "She wouldn't have known that on her own," Vasquez said. "There's no way. And when we told Megan, she just went quiet. Said he never hit Lily, but he didn't need to. Fear was enough." Claire stared down at her hands. He was going to do it. That night, or the next. The hammer, the detour, the urgency. It hadn't been about punishment. It had been preparation. She looked up at Vasquez. "Will he be held?" He nodded. "No bail. Multiple charges. And Megan's already filed for emergency protection orders. We've also notified CPS. Lily's safe. For good this time." Claire nodded slowly. The room was too quiet now. The air felt too still, like the adrenaline had finally drained from her body and left only exhaustion behind. She rose from the chair, reaching for her coat. But before she could open the door, Vasquez spoke again. "Not everyone does what you did." Claire turned back. Most people would have brushed it off, said it wasn't their business, or they'd worry about being wrong, about overstepping. But you followed her, and because you did, she's still here. Claire didn't smile, not because she wasn't grateful, but because the weight of it was too real, too close. I couldn't sleep if I hadn't, she said softly. She stepped outside into the stillness of dawn. The cold air kissed her cheeks, and in the distance, the black silhouette of Mount Rainier pierced the horizon, just beginning to glow with the first hints of morning. The streetlights were still on. The city hadn't quite remembered itself yet. Back in her car, she sat for a long moment. Then her phone buzzed. One new message from an unknown number, but the name in the preview made her heart still. Lily. A photo popped up. Blurry, likely taken from a hospital bed. Lily was in the frame, holding her fox tightly against her chest. Eyes sleepy but smiling, really smiling, the kind that fills the whole face. Megan stood behind her with a half-bandaged arm wrapped gently over Lily's shoulder. And a caption beneath it, in shaky, childish spelling, "Thank you for not leaving me." Claire blinked against the wetness building in her eyes. She looked out the windshield again. The light was growing now, stronger, more sure of itself. She took one deep breath, then turned the key in the ignition and drove home, no longer just a teacher, not just a witness, but someone who had chosen to see a child no one else noticed and answered